delighted to introduce our next speaker, Gomathy Viswanathan. She is the Senior Associate in Solutioning and Design at the Math Company. Gomathy will speak on the challenges of building products that withstand the test of time and remain relevant in today's fast-paced business landscape. Join me in welcoming her and hearing her views.
Hey everyone, really nice to meet all of you today. It's such an honor to be speaking at this event. I'm Gomathy. I'm a design lead at the Math Company. I started my journey as a data scientist turned into a data visualization designer. And today I lead a team of 20 plus designers who work on building custom end-to-end analytical products and ensure that they're being adopted. And throughout this journey, the biggest question that I've always had is what are the connections that exist, right? I come from a very different background. A lot of my team members also come from psychology and architecture, and that really differentiates the kind of work that they essentially do. And it's one of my favorite interview questions as well, because everyone has a very unique story of how they got into design, and that truly makes them who they are, right? And this connection actually goes back in history as well, right? In terms of art and math. And today it might seem like opposite ends of the spectrum, but they actually had a lot of connections and a lot to learn from each other, right? And I'm sure the most obvious ones that we would have heard of is mathematical concepts being used in art, like the golden ratio or the starry night, right, which has a lot of phenomena. But there is an opposite side to this as well, right? And this is one such example, right? So this is the example of relativity, which was actually illustrated first and only after which the mathematicians even began to explore such a concept. And this was the first one that led to that entire research, right? Which is usually not so much talked about. And the same thing is how I think about design and analytics as well. I do believe both of us are essentially trying to drive value for the organizations that we essentially work for, but we just do it in very different methods, right? For example, a designer questions users, whereas and data scientist probably questions the data. They question the previous transactions that has happened and the truth as what has gone on. But whether designers question the users of how they felt, right, what they went through and what could have been done better. After which, all of us pretty much try to derive patterns, right? What are most number of people doing, and how can we make that easier for all of them, right? Can we customize it to a different set of folks, and through that patterns is how we get there, right? And with all of this, all we're really trying to do is solve the problem, right? And this is really what led me to think about how can design solve this problem in analytics, right? And this is a huge one. It exists across the industry of multiple different organizations wanting to drive a data-driven culture, wanting to make more decisions with data and investing a lot in AI and ML. However, only 15% of them actually use it in their work. That's 1 in 6 organizations who actually invest in AI who see value from it, right? And this is where it stops being an analytical problem. It starts becoming a design problem, right? What are we designing wrong? And what is really not working out is what we're going to explore a little bit more, right? And this is essentially a typical journey that any product takes in this particular world. And the first two stages are actually relevant for every single app that we essentially use, where we go through an initial hesitation phase of, do I really need this? Don't I have 3 other apps, which probably does the same thing, to when you realize that this is so much better, right? I love giving the example of Todoist because I've been personally hooked onto the product just because of that onboarding journey they offer, where they ask you to create a task and then you check it off. That really gives you that feeling of reward, right? But most analytical products fail after this stage because this is where they start using it every day. They start facing a lot of different obstacles on the way because it's not completely integrated into their day-to-day process, right? Or they see probably a little lower prediction than what they're used to, and they stop using it, right? That's where we see most number of people drop off. To the final stage where the number of users stagnate. These are usually the ones who have figured out, say, a workaround to use the same application, and that's usually what ends up happening, right? Now, how can we solve this? And I truly believe design is the answer to this particular problem as well, right? So, some of the ways that we have tackled some of these issues is the first thing is really the experience, right? How can we empathize with what each person in an organization is trying to do with this information, right? From the different types of formats that we're able to create this but for different sets of people, right? With different characteristics, with different ways of how they're going to use it, different levels of data literacy as well, which means they need more education of what can be done, right? To them using it in multiple different ways, right? To say a leadership, they probably need to create a presentation which is going to be a lot more narrative than anything else, right? To a brand manager, where they can just take a simulator or take an Excel workbook and play around and work with them, brainstorm with them, and so on and so forth. So it's a very different type of format and the kind of way that they consume this information compared to a leadership, right? So the first step is to really understand that. The second one is, of course, how do we make it simple and intuitive, right? And you can see probably a very bad example here, but why do this KPI card have 9 different colors, right? What does it even signify? And is 9 KPIs the best way for us to highlight the most important information a stakeholder needs? Absolutely not, right? To a world map, which probably shows one metric across everything, which is not the best way for me to get the most information as well, right? To the chart that you see at the bottom, where I need to compare these different bars, but it's going to be extremely hard for me to do that, right? So, how do we think about data heavy dashboards, and how can we think about designing the information flow of it to make sure that the user goes through the least amount of cognitive overload, but at the same time gets exactly what they would want? Because in a dashboard, you see a particular metric, you have 5 different questions, right? So how do you take that user through that journey becomes extremely critical. And the last bit is essentially, how do you communicate value? Because we're talking about additional processes, or a replacement of an existing process that a user is already following. So it becomes extremely important for us to tell them that this is why it's going to add value to everything that you're doing today. Right. And we do this in 3 steps. In terms of one, exciting users, telling them this is what's coming. It's going to save 10 hours of your time every single week, and it really attracts their attention because that's more time with family, right? To educating them in terms of how do you use this particular solution, when do you use it, when do you not use it, right? How can they be more aware of the AI prediction that they essentially see, and how much of explanation does it really give them, right? To finally, how can you reinforce this usage, not just launch it and onboard people, but continuously engage with them to make sure that you get more feedback from them, you continuously improve on the product. And we've done this in different ways, by, say, giving badges or testimonials and so on, and it's usually worked really well for us, right? So this is essentially a very quick view of the different things that we essentially do through these 3-step process to make sure that we are designing products really well, we're keeping it extremely intuitive, and we're also making sure that everyone understands the value of why they need to use the solution, right? So together, there's been a lot that I've really learned from the community of design, a lot of principles that has actually helped me shape a lot of things that you would have essentially seen. And some of these, we are testing it out. We are, of course, iterating and getting better at it. So would love to connect with all of you, whoever's interested on this particular topic, would love to know more about what you're doing and how you're trying to solve this problem. Thank you so much for listening in.